Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 38 of my 2020 reads. This week I read a poetry collection, a lot of different graphic works, and nothing from my TBR, but many of the graphic works that I read were Latinx, so they at least counted for my monthly priority. So the poetry collection that I finished this week was Postcolonial Love Poem by Natalie Diaz. This is actually an author who is both Latinx and Indigenous of Mojave, and I'd heard about this collection from Jocelyn at Yogi with a Book. I will link her below, as well as a video she did, which was a recommendations for Latinx books, which is where I heard about this one. So this poetry collection was really fascinating. I do think that this is one of those poetry collections that maybe is meant for slightly more advanced readers of poetry than me, so a lot of it went over my head, but the things that I grasped in it, I really loved. There was so much imagery and so much metaphor and so much connection between the ideas and the colors that she came up with and who she saw herself as. So this collection is really looking at two main things. It's looking at Diaz's identity as Mojave, and especially the way that being Indigenous in the US works, especially I think looking at issues regarding water. So there's a big connection between her culture and water, and there's a lot of issues with water rights regarding Indigenous communities in the US. So I really love that aspect of this poetry collection. The other part of the collection that I thought was really a big theme was love. So much of the work in this is love poems, and kind of erotic love poems too. I think I read at the end, some of these are actually letters that she wrote to her lover. Oh, and also she is queer, so her lover is another woman, and just so many of these were sort of celebrations of the body, of sensuality, of love, and I really thought that it was so cool to read all of those. And that mixture too between all of these poems, which are talking about some very difficult things that Indigenous communities are going through, as well as all of these poems that are celebrating love. So I think that the title of this collection, Postcolonial Love Poem, is really apt, and I thought that just the strength of these poems was so good. They were really beautiful. Some of it went over my head, but everything that I grasped, I really liked. So I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars, and if you like poetry, I think try this one. It's really worth your time. Next, I finished Good Talk by Mira Jacob. This is a graphic memoir in conversations. So really what it is Mira Jacob, who is a second-generation Indian American, so the daughter of immigrants to the US, takes a look at a bunch of different conversations that she's had throughout her life, and this spans everything from modern day back to when she was a child, and looks at the way that she's had these conversations with her parents or strangers or her husband or her son, and the way that that kind of represents and informs and influences her identity, her experiences being brown in the US, raising a brown child in the US, and just so many of these complexities of kind of identity and race and the way that that interacts in these conversations. It is so good, and it's done in a very unique style as well, because although this is a graphic memoir, it's different from most other graphic memoirs. It's not really set up like a comic so much as it is there are certain drawings of her or other people in her life, and those drawings never change. There's just one for her for different ages, and the main thing is the conversation. So it's very centered on these conversations. It's a really unique art style and just so good. Sush also read it, and we both have a lot of thoughts about this, so we will do a standalone review of it together later on this week or next week, because there's so much to really discuss and unpack in these stories. I think that if you like graphic memoirs, if you like conversations about identity, if you like discussions of the way that kind of race and politics work in the US, I think this is such a fantastic collection. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and if you're interested, go ahead and check out the standalone review that I'll be posting with Sush soon. It's really, really worth your time. Next, I finished Women in Sports by Rachel Ignotofsky. This is a collection of mini biographies of women throughout history who have been influential in sports, and it is meant for children. It is illustrated with just the most amazing illustration style. I absolutely love it. And it is something that I have been reading out loud to Sush for the past year or so. We just read a couple of the mini bios every once in a while. We had previously read Women in Science, which was also spectacular. And this was interesting because I'm not really into sports, so she isn't really into sports, but we got so into these biographies. Rachel Ignotofsky just does such a good job of talking about all of these different women and showing you how impactful they were and how their efforts in sports really kind of changed the way that we see women and the way that sports work. It's just, oh, it was so good, and I love the illustration, and I learned so much about so many different people. I'm really, really glad that we read this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to read the other books that she has in the series, which I think is ongoing. Next, I read 3 different picture books that were all Latinx. I think that almost all of these are from a recommendations video that Priscilla at Bookie did, so I will link that recommendations video below as well as her channel. But these were all super good picture books about different Latinx people, so these are all also biographies. So first I read Frida Kahlo and her Animalitos by Monica Brown, illustrated by John Parra. And this is a picture book that is telling kind of the story of Frida Kahlo's life, but in particular focusing on her relationship with all of the different animals. Apparently she had lots and lots of different animals throughout her life, and that was very influential in her art as well and in her life. So this is a really, really beautifully illustrated picture book. I loved the style of the illustrations, and I loved that it's, you know, this picture book that is directed at young kids, talking about Frida Kahlo and her animals, which I think is very appealing to young kids, but also talking about some of the difficult things that Frida Kahlo went through, all of the kind of disability that she had to deal with, from polio as a kid to getting run over by a bus when she was 18 and being, you know, stuck in bed and needing to do something with her life and picking up art. I think Frida Kahlo in general is a very inspirational figure, and I think this was such a great picture book, just beautifully illustrated, that tells about her life in a way that's really appealing to young kids. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Tito Puente, also by Monica Brown, illustrated by Rafael López, which is also a biography, this time of Tito Puente, who was a mambo musician, a drummer, and also an orchestra director and a person who composed music, and just really, really influential in mambo and jazz and just sort of Latinx music in the US. So this is the story of his life, and I loved it. It was so well done, especially again for young children. The illustrations were so good. I especially loved the texture that was given to the different colorings. It was really, really fun. I loved the illustrations in this, and I also loved the playfulness of the language, because Tito Puente is a drummer, and there was so much in here that had rhythm and had that kind of sound of drums, and it was just really, really immersive. Also, this book is bilingual, so everything that has written in English, it also has written in Spanish. So I read both, and that was good because, you know, it's definitely one of my goals to read more in other languages, but my language skills are very limited. So it's nice when I have both languages back to back and I can kind of fill in the gaps of what I don't understand. And I just thoroughly enjoyed this book as well. So I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And lastly, I read Planting Stories by Anika, Aldamuy, and Denise, illustrated by Paola Escobar. This is another biography, this time about Pura Belpré, who was a woman from Puerto Rico who moved to New York City in the 1920s as an adult. and ended up getting hired at the New York Public Library to bring more Spanish language books into their collection. And she found that they didn't have very many, and they especially didn't have any of these stories from Puerto Rico that she grew up with, especially because her family was a family of storytellers. So she ended up telling those stories as well as writing books about them to add them to the collection. And it's just this really beautiful story about storytelling and about the impact that this woman had. There's also an award named after her, the Pura Belpré Award, for Latinx kind of children's storytelling. And it was just really beautiful to read about. The illustrations in this are absolutely gorgeous, and there's all of this really detailed backgrounds of the city and like beautiful flowers, and it's just really gorgeous in the way that it is illustrated. I did think that the story itself didn't always grip me quite as much as some of the other picture book stories, but I still really enjoyed this one, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so that wraps up my reading for this week. It's another week where basically all I read was graphic works and poetry. It's not that I'm not starting any of the books that are on my TBR, but I'm not making very much progress with them. I'm just not in the mood. But hopefully before the end of the month, I will make some more progress. We'll see. If you guys have read any of these books, if you have any thoughts, any comments, any recommendations, anything at all, go ahead, leave me a comment down below.